Yo, what up? This is D Knight, and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. My oh my, we've had so much going on. For starters, in case you missed it, we've got a new addition to the Pardon Pie family, Tara Dublin. Make sure you go follow her on Twitter at Tara Dublin Rocks. Also, pick up a copy of her book while you're at it. Make her day, The Sound of Settling. A very fun and interesting read compared to the things we talk about on this podcast. But yeah, we're heading toward the do or die time for the 2024 election. Go ahead and hit up JoeBiden.com. Get that man like $1 a month or something. Help his campaign staff up and get prepared to try and save our democracy. And make sure to grab like one other person you know and tell them about the podcast. Make sure they subscribe and tune in every single week. We got a lot of things coming up for you this year. We need all the support that we can get. So if you do your part and help us grow our audience, we'll do our part and help elect Joe Biden in 2024 and save American democracy. And this is the Pardon the Insurrection podcast.
So I'm catching up on the news that you've noticed via your tweets.
Yeah. Well, there's more. There's more going on than I can keep up with today. I mean, there was more going on in the news since we recorded last that I wanted to include, but I just didn't have time. I work too much, like trying to do a job in this podcast and Twitter and Spoutable. It's not stretching my limits, but it's plenty. And just trying to keep up with all this fuckery. Oh no.
15 million less, I couldn't.
Oh no. Trump is being interviewed by Tucker Carlson and he's saying some crazy shit.
Tough place. And I'll tell you, people were crying. People that work there, professionally work there, that have no problems putting in murderers and they see everybody. It's tough place.
He's talking about
and
Manhattan.
They were crying. They were actually crying. They said, I'm sorry. They said, 2024, sir, 2024. And tears are pouring down their eyes. I've never seen anything like those people are phenomenal.
The things
Those
that never happened.
That's how you know it was a fucking lie.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, this is D Knight.
This is Carol.
And you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. And this episode of Pardon the Insurrection is sponsored by Sheets and Giggles. Yes, that's right. We sold out, but we're still going to sleep well at night because we have sheets on the way from Colin, the CEO of Sheets and Giggles. And you too can sell out by supporting our sponsor and purchasing some wonderful sheets and bedding. And you too can sleep as well at night as Trump is after being arraigned in Manhattan.
I feel like you're saying they wouldn't be sleeping well.
That's a joke. Yes, you got it. A single right-wing judge has recently ruled that the FDA has to revoke its approval for the abortion drug mifepristone, which would affect availability of the drug nationwide.
Yeah, which is some bullshit. I still think Biden should say to ignore that. Just ignore it.
So I don't think Biden should ignore the ruling. I think the administration, along with state legislatures and advocates for women's health, should do everything in their power to challenge that ruling in court as they see fit. And hopefully we end up with a positive outcome before we resort to things like completely ignoring law.
But you think it would go before the Supreme Court?
Well, here's the thing. So Merrick Garland's DOJ immediately appealed, along with a Washington state judge issuing a contradictory ruling just 18 minutes after the Texas judge, setting up a battle over abortion access in the Supreme Court. Yes. So I'm absolutely certain, given the conflicting rulings between judges in different states, that this is headed for a Supreme Court ruling.
But don't we would have an impartial judiciary.
It's funny that you say that because Justice Clarence Thomas had accepted and failed to disclose 20 years worth of lavish gifts and luxury travel to the tune of tens of millions of dollars from a billionaire mega donor, despite ethics rules requiring him to do so, and possibly in violation of criminal law. So I'm not going to say that you can assume at face value that the Supreme Court would rule on this case with an eye towards impartiality.
You
Ty, wake up.
I mean, you think that Clarence Thomas?
Wake your ass up, Ty.
Ah!
Sorry, I wasn't yelling at you.
I figured when you called me Ty that it wasn't you were talking to Ty, and when you said wake up.
Well, Ty clearly got her sheets and giggles because she is out for the night. Well, Ty got the sheets
dear.
and we get the giggles about.
Yeah, she might be
her
back.
falling
She
asleep.
sleeps weird hours
That's fair.
with her narcolepsy and the other one, insomnia.
Well, this just proves that our voices are so soothing that we can put literally anyone to sleep at any time.
Yeah, that's the takeaway.
Rockabye, baby, in the treetop. Yep. So, yep. Clarence Thomas on the take. So no, Clarence Thomas hasn't been funded. That's really cute. No, Clarence Thomas hasn't been funded by George Soros, but instead by a GOP benefactor by the name of Harlan Crow, who sounds like he could be the new up-and-coming rapper or a supervillain.
And there he goes with his friend Webster Barnaby as they torment children in the night and steal their dinners and eat them in front of the children.
Harlan Crow, named after a comic book supervillain, perhaps, has a private collection of intriguing artifacts, including statues of dictators, including Mussolini and Stalin, in his yard that he affectionately refers to as the Garden of Evil.
The Garden of Evil. I have a danger barn, so what am I going to say? But I don't have anything evil in there. It's just old, and there's like maybe a squirrel or a raccoon's living in there. But yeah.
You mean what? No statues commemorating Mussolini's reign over Italy? No. It's unfortunate.
Though the train station in Milan was very pretty. That was commemorating Mussolini's role. That's what the taxi driver told me, at least.
Happy times. Harlan Crow also has a number of Nazi memorabilia prominently on display inside of his house, including 2 paintings by Adolf Hitler, of notable acclaim for his works of art in the early 19th century or 20th century, and an autographed copy of Mein Kampf. Apparently, Harlan keeps the good stuff indoors.
The paintings, like I wouldn't even get one of those George W. Bush paintings. You can't just like eat good things and redeem yourself of your evil.
Hey, Carol, I love that we're comparing Hitler paintings to George W. Bush paintings.
I mean, look, George W. Bush doesn't get. I mean, a lot of people died. He is a war criminal. I mean, or he should have been tried as a war criminal.
I mean, considering
So didn't we kill like 1 million Iraqis?
Under George Bush's regime, we went to war with the wrong country, not once, but twice.
Are you listing 2 different George Bushes or just the one?
No, okay. Well, I feel like not necessarily that the war in Iraq over the invasion of Kuwait was justified. That's a more, I mean, you could present arguments on both sides of that, but I was talking about the son, George Bush. Yep. So we went to war in Afghanistan over the attack on 9/11. If you go back and look at the countries of origin for most of the attackers, you will clearly find that they originated from Saudi Arabia. But we went to war.
What are we doing? Taking their money instead? Yeah.
Yeah. We went to war with Afghanistan over an attack perpetrated by Saudis. And then we proceeded later, just a couple of years later, to go to war in Iraq.
Mm-hmm. And
over
George W.
weapons
Bush,
of mass destruction that they did not possess, that we knew at the time.
So he has a more attractive packaging than Hitler. He's like, he's got like that like charm And now he's like, I'm just a former president painting dogs and myself in the shower.
He's got that good old Southern Texas cowboy charm.
Forget about the million people I got killed.
Yeah, and then Republicans learned their lesson by trying to rally behind Jeb Bush in 2016. They wanted to complete the trifecta: George Sr., George Jr.,
and now we look back at him as like the second most evil recent Republican president. Like, we're like, remember the good old days when it was just like.
Can you name the last Republican president that you were like, oh yeah, not bad? I can't off the top of my head.
Lincoln.
All right. Let's engage in a fun exercise. We'll name all the Republican presidents going backwards. We're going to start with Donald Trump. He gets, yeah. He's disqualified from the good president category.
He's not even considered. You were not even considering him here. Come on.
No? Are you sure?
No, he's like still standing on a burning pile of our country, like burning it more with some fucking fuel. So fuck that guy. He's not
totally fair. Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, George Bush Jr., as I like to call him.
Yeah. Fucking war criminal.
Yeah. Well, George Bush Sr., one of the few presidents other than Donald Trump to only serve one term in office. I mean, that lets you know how well that was going. Given that he's probably also a criminal, given his role in Reagan's Iran-Contra affair. Speaking of which, before George Bush Sr., Ronald Reagan was president, total dumpster fire, although Republicans still seem to worship him to this day.
Yeah. So part of the problem with this is like George H.W. Bush. I was a baby. I was a little kid.
He was a baby. History books, baby.
Kid. No, but we didn't. By the time I could read it now. I'm saying, but I wasn't taught about them because that wasn't in the history books yet.
Oh, totally fair. Like we grew up in that era where, like,
I think like Nixon. We learned about like Jimmy Carter, maybe.
Yeah. All right.
We were up to that.
No, he was on some fuck shittery. He's actually very much like modern day Republicans who pretend to not support Trump. Like they're all about the fuckery. They just don't want to broadcast it across the country.
All right, let's keep going.
Yeah. Before Bush was Reagan. Again, Iran-Contra and and a number of other scandals. Gerald Ford, pardon Nixon. So fuck that guy. Richard Nixon, self-explanatory. Fuck that guy. Dwight D. Eisenhower, elected in the 50s. Would you give him a thumbs up or a thumbs down? And a thumbs up being like 51% and up, and a thumbs down being 49% and down.
I just don't have enough of an opinion about him. See, that's like how far back I have to get to like not know enough about them to hate them.
We have to go back 80 years to find a Republican where we're like, That lets you know how fucked up the Republican Party has been. He also had his pros and cons.
So when the Google result for was Eisenhower a good president, which was a preset when I Googled him.
Well, he was presiding over the country at the end of World War II, so that's a pro, I suppose. I don't know necessarily how much. All it says here is,
I mean, this is just the first result and just what you see on the page. A poll of prominent historians in 1962 placed Eisenhower 22nd among presidents, a barely average chief executive.
Yeah, he's
who
very
was as
middling.
Successful as Chester A. Arthur.
Oh, okay. Well, I will give it to the historians. Very middling. All right, back to the news of the day. We went back in time. We time travel there.
Yeah, I think we were talking about Hitler, which reminded us of me of George W. Bush.
And we had to go through an exercise to see which Republican presidents were better than Hitler. Really low bar.
So, but now we're bringing it back around to The enablers of fascism. Who do we got up next? We had Clarence Thomas. We had Harlan Crow.
Yeah, so Harlan Crow, Republican benefactor, who's been who's been collecting Hitler artifacts as well as Supreme Court justices. Also donated $500,000 to a conservative advocacy group, Liberty Central, which was founded by Jeannie Thomas. Actually,
Thomas,
yeah,
wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas.
The world is so small, Carol.
Oh, geez, that's a huge conflict of interest.
You don't say.
I do say.
Yeah, well, that donation actually led to Jeannie Thomas founding that group. And then that group proceeded to pay her a yearly salary of $120,000. So he is literally paying Jeannie Thomas's salary.
That's what friends do. It's just hospitality.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because Clarence Thomas proclaimed that he and Harlan Crow have been friends for north of 20 years.
It was just north of right when he was appointed to the Supreme Court and sworn in.
Sadly, I would have to mention that Clarence Thomas has been sitting on the Supreme Court for 30 years. So he actually met Harlan Crow after his appointment to the Supreme Court.
That's what I meant to be saying. Yes.
If you don't want it to look any more suspicious than it is, just say, yeah, we've been friends for X amount of years. Well, sir, how long have you been sitting on the Supreme Court? Well, more years than that. Yep. Way to make it look less suspicious, buddy.
But apparently higher standards apply to like every other judge and lawyer than do specifically to the Supreme Court, who did not have that robust code of conduct, apparently.
Okay. Well, since you brought up the code of conduct that all federal judges are supposed to abide by, but the Supreme Court has generally looked at the code of conduct to not apply specifically to themselves. It's ironic because all of the conservative justices appointed to the Supreme Court are
hacks. Federalist Society hacks.
Okay, their philosophy as it pertains to interpreting the Constitution in written law is to read it literally.
Textualists.
They're textualists, yes. So to look at the statute,
but they're not even doing that every time.
Well, the statute that applies to ethics guidelines for judicial appointees, they're not even reading that textually. They're interpreting it as they see fit in a manner that's convenient to them. So yeah, there goes that whole impartiality thing up in smoke that we were discussing. All right, on to more. I mean, because if that wasn't enough fuckery, here's more.
Here's more.
The House Judiciary Committee, led by GOP Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, said it will hold a hearing April 17th in New York City titled Victims of Violent Crime in Manhattan, accusing the Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, of being pro-crime.
That's why is he coming here? Go stay out of our state. Don't come here and mess with our elected officials.
Okay, well, I can explain to you exactly why. Bragg has just indicted one of the biggest criminals in American history, Donald J. Trump. So that would be why.
You say
they are exercising their legislative powers in an attempt to defend their former president / future, their current front runner in the Republican nomination for president in the 2024 election. Yep, great job, Jim. Accusing Bragg of being pro-crime. And that's also funny because Trump just told Republicans in Congress to defund the FBI and DOJ. So you're going after Bragg in defense of the person who just proclaimed that he would like Republicans to defund the police.
Let me explain this. Law and order means hitting people in the face with a nightstick. That's all they mean by it. Not following the laws or abiding by anything themselves. Law and order to them is, I'm pretty sure that just means like police brutality.
Okay, I see how you did the math there, and the conclusion you came to was correct. The D.C. Court of Appeals ruled that Mike Pence was indeed protected in part by the speech and debate clause of the Constitution, and therefore does not have to testify to Jack Smith's grand jury about his role on 1/6 as the president of the Senate. So we were wrong. All of our shit, we were like, well, of course, there's 3 branches of government: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And the vice president is obviously a member of the executive branch. We were like, whoop-de-doo, this stupid fucking argument, it won't fly. You're like, Jesus Christ, get the fuck out of here. Well, the judge ruled that pardon the insurrection was fucking wrong. So, yep, I'm going to eat my crow on that.
And I just don't remember having this conversation, so I must not have said it and been wrong.
Carol, you were probably high. Yeah, but the judge also ruled that Pence must comply with the subpoena for his testimony about anything outside of his role on 1/6, relating to any potential illegal acts committed by Trump and turn over relevant documents. So we were half right.
So he's involved with the documents case as well. I mean, he's going to have to bring stuff in for that. This is just for the Jan 6th.
No, any documents pertaining to Trump's plans leading up to 1/6, but just nothing about his role on or his actions taken on that specific day in the specific narrow instance of his role as the president of the Senate on 1/6. So I assume things like,
I mean, we all saw that.
Yeah, we have that on TV. I imagine it, anything pertaining to the specifics of his overseeing of the counting of the electoral college votes on 1/6, he won't be able to be questioned about. But things like, why his access badge was deactivated on 1/6, I don't know. I imagine that could probably come up in his testimony before the grand jury, and he won't be able to invoke the speech or debate clause or claim executive privilege. So things of that matter.
Good. So it doesn't sound all that limiting.
Yeah. So, like questions like, how do you feel about Trump trying to have you murdered by a brutal mob? He won't be able to, he won't be able to refuse to answer that question under the speech or debate clause. Good for him.
I'm just going to read. Trump then moved to block Pence from appearing before the grand jury on the grounds of executive privilege, an argument that failed to convince the court in Trump's earlier efforts to bar the testimony of other top aides, including former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows.
And a bunch of other fuckers. Yep. So
bunch of other fuckers.
Trump decided to step in and try and exert executive privilege over Pence's testimony. It's not going to go well. Again, like, that claim has failed over and over and over and over again. It's going to fail yet again. So, useless endeavor.
He'll buy him a week
or 2. But yeah, that's the whole point. Just delay,
but he
delay,
gets to
delay.
spend more of his rube money.
Yeah, so Trump isn't actually financing his legal defense out of his own pocket. He's using the money he raised through his PAC after the 2020 election by lying to people saying it was rigged, where he raised $250 million. So
and I think he just gets off on spending their money and getting it from them, and he's just like wasting it because he doesn't fucking care. And he's like, yes, look how much money they'll give me. Let's do another stupid lawsuit.
So it would be in the same fashion as if I was like dating a girl who had a sugar daddy, and like I got to spend, he would give her money and she would spend it on me. Like I would get off on that. It's the same thing with Trump and his supporters. There you go. Yeah. All right. The fuckery never stops. A handful of current and former U.S. Secret Service officials testified on Friday before a Washington, D.C. grand jury as part of the special counsel investigation of last year's FBI search at why did we ever elect this fucker as president? Former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate, in which classified documents were seized. This just a week after Trump's attorney, Evan Corcoran, the Cork, was ordered to testify. Cork man was ordered to testify to Jack Smith's grand jury, on top of Smith amassing a large swath of new evidence of Trump's obstruction. So I guess all I really have to say here is fuck you, Secret Service. You fuckers can send fucking agents to my house over a fucking tweet, but you couldn't prepare for 1-6, even though you had adequate notice. Fuck you guys. I'm glad you have to testify. Like yeah, middle finger to you. Middle finger salute to you fuckers. At least, you know, if you testify honestly, you probably have to bury Trump. And if you don't, well, go ahead and perjure yourselves. Good fucking luck, pieces of shit. The investigation has also grown to include Homeland Security Inspector General Joseph Kafari and his role in deleting Secret Service text messages around the time of January 6th. So, if you're unfamiliar with Kafari, he is currently the Inspector General in Department of Homeland Security. He is one of the individuals responsible for the plan to have an organization-wide update, quote unquote, of the phones, where they had to turn the phones in and have them swapped out for new devices.
That doesn't sound suspicious.
No, not at all. It's like conveniently planned in the end of 2020 to have every agent and every DHS official turn in your devices to have them wiped.
Hey, speaking of that suspicious, I have to pee. Cover for me.
And I think that's a cue for a commercial break, even though we don't have commercials on this podcast. But
I'm sorry, I really have to pee.
Just in case we do. After these messages, we'll be right back.